Thank you, John, and thank you, David. This is the last leg of a fascinating but probably far too abbreviated tour of this great and diverse, wonderful country. I've been in Montreal, Ottawa, and Toronto at the invitation of the IDRC and Ambassador Malone. And I'd like to thank the IDRC and Ambassador Malone for giving me this opportunity of not just sharing my views with a cross-section of extremely well-informed audiences, but also of the kind of encounters, planned and accidental encounters that this trip has allowed me to have with a cross-section of Canadians. Ambassador Malone himself is someone who's altogether rare, a diplomat who combines scholarship with humility. There's some diplomats who are scholarly. He's the first diplomat I've actually met who's humble, but so that's an extraordinary combination. And I knew that when I used to meet him in Delhi, and to get to know him, and to get to know his compatriots, and the major cities of Canada has been an extraordinarily enriching experience. And it's appropriate that I come last to UBC because this was the one part of Canada that I did know. In 2004, at the invitation of the distinguished geographer Graham Wynne, I spent a week as the Green Professor at UBC, when I renewed contact with, among other people, the eminent historian of modern India, Harjot Singh Oberoi, who's, I'm proud to say, like Graham Wynne, a friend and a colleague of long standing. And I retained wonderful memories of my week in Vancouver. So it's really nice that I'm back here, and after having seen the other interesting and richly endowed universities of this country. Now, my talk is entitled 10 Reasons Why India Will Not and Should Not Become a Superpower. But before I come to those 10 reasons, I thought in deference to our common colonial heritage, I'll read you an excerpt from what a Scotsman said about India. Dr. Hepburn talked about India's cultural diversity. That, I think, is in many ways the most striking aspect of the Indian nation state, and the most obvious embodiment of that cultural diversity is the Indian rupee note, which has the denomination written in 17 different languages, indeed in 17 different scripts. Now, the Canadians are immeasurably superior to the Americans in being officially and culturally and emphatically bilingual, but you guys are infants compared to us. So it's India as a political experiment. India is unique. It's unique in that never before was a country so large and so diverse, not just in terms of religion, but in terms of faith, dress, ecology, technology. India is the only country where you would find Stone Age hunter-gatherers and the nuclear bomb, for example, to give you a staggering example of what we hold within us. So it's as a political experiment, India is unique because never before and never since will a single nation be constituted out of so many diverse and disparate parts, and never before, and possibly never since, will a country, a vast majority of whose population was illiterate, choose the route of electoral democracy. So as a political experiment, I think India is the most reckless, daring, ambitious political experiment ever conceived by humankind. It's an experiment with great flaws, and I will itemize some of those flaws. But I'd like to, at the outset, flag the extraordinary ambition of trying to constitute India as a single nation state, and then trying to run its polity on democratic lines. And in many ways, the most remarkable tribute to this idea of India was offered by a Scotsman. His name was J.B.S. Haldane. Some of you will know him as one of the greatest biologists of the 20th century. I'm sure his work is still taught in some courses in this university. But Haldane was that very unusual and atypical scientist who, late in life, decided to leave a comfortable and secure academic career in the West for a leap in the darkness, for a new career in India, which was young, independent, conflict-ridden, poor. Now, the UBC, like many other universities in North America and Europe, has been witness and has been a beneficiary of a different kind of migration, whereby young, gifted, talented scientists from the East make their home in the West. But here is Haldane doing the reverse transition, which is again probably quite special. And when Haldane left his chair in University College London in 1956 to move to become a professor at the Indian Statistical Institute in Calcutta, he was asked why he took this rather crazy and uncharacteristic step, and he gave various answers. Haldane was he was a brilliant, angular, cantankerous kind of man, and so he gave different answers. He told one journalist that the Suez Canal had just been invaded by the British and the French, and he didn't want to live in this imperialist country. He told another journalist that Jawaharlal Nehru was a more appealing statesman than Anthony Eden, as indeed he was. And then he told a third journalist who asked him why he was leaving the pinnacle of British university life to go to a poor and half-starved country. He said, 60 years in socks are enough. So anyway, Haldane moves to India in 1956, and he joins the Indian Statistical Institute, starts experimenting on new strains of rice, among other things, learns Sanskrit, becomes a vegetarian, wears Indian food, and is fast-tracked on the route to Indian citizenship. It was a great privilege for us to have Haldane. I mean, an ordinary Scotsman who tries to become an Indian citizen today, as David Malone knows, it may take him 20 years. But Haldane became an Indian citizen very quickly. But he continued to contribute productively and creatively to scholarly research. 3 years after he moved to India, there was a profile of Haldane in an American science magazine, where the reporter described him as a citizen of the world. Now, there are lots of people in this room, myself included, who would be rather chuffed and pleased if someone called us a citizen of the world. We would think that this is a tribute to our ability to transcend narrow-mindedness, parochialism, to have empathy and contact with all of humanity and so on. But Haldane, true to type, was irritated by this description. And he shot off a letter to this American journalist saying, "No doubt," and I'm quoting from that letter, he said, "no doubt I am in some sense a citizen of the world. But I believe with Thomas Jefferson that one of the chief duties of a citizen is to be a nuisance to the government of his state. As there is no world state, I cannot do this. On the other hand, I can be and am a nuisance to the government of India, which has the merit of permitting a good deal of criticism, although it reacts to it rather slowly." Now, this is 1960. I can tell you in 2010, that is precisely my experience. That the government of India has, unlike the government of China, to take your point, sir, has the merit of permitting a good deal of criticism, but it reacts to it rather slowly, if at all. But then Haldane continues, "I also happen to be proud of being a citizen of India, which is a lot more diverse than Europe, let alone the USA, USSR or China, and thus a better model for a possible world organization. It may, of course, break up, but it is a wonderful experiment. So I want to be labeled a citizen of India." Shortly after this, in an article that Haldane wrote himself, he described his new homeland, India, as the closest approximation to the free world.